I have never met anyone who doesn't overeat from time to time. And I've rarely met anyone who doesn't hold some degree of dislike or frustration for those parts of them that tend to overeat. But here's the thing. What if you could change that? What if you could let go of that dislike? What would you learn? What's underneath that tendency to overeat at times? Today, we're going to explore the power of curiosity to drive deep change, leveraging the power of internal family systems. So, if you're ready to understand why you overeat and to transform and change those parts of you, let's dive in. Let's talk first about why we tend to dislike our overeating parts. We are taught to label things as good or bad so that we can cling to the good because it serves us in a certain way, or push away or shun the bad because it distracts or takes us away from our objectives, right? So, this label of good versus bad, while totally subjective, helps us to meet our goals, right? It helps move us toward being accepted, receiving approval, receiving connection, or staying safe, right? Some of those core needs, right? As we label things good or bad, we know what to move towards and what to pull away from. So this makes total sense, right? In the case of overeating and our overeating parts, when we overeat, it can totally derail our desire to be healthy or our desire to maintain a certain weight, right? And so we label it as bad because it is distracting or taking us away from those goals. But here's the thing, when we label it as bad, it does come at a cost. So let's talk about that next. Okay, so then what is the problem with labeling it as bad? If it distracts us from our goal, it's not helping or serving us, why wouldn't we label it as bad? By labeling it as bad, what we're doing is distancing that eating part away from us so that it exists more in the shadows. It doesn't go away, it just exists in the shadows where it continues to work, right? And anytime you've had that experience of sort of setting health goals and thinking you're doing great, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're overeating again. That's a perfect example, right, of an overeating part that's sort of left in the shadows and not really fully taken care of. And this is a really important principle to know. All behavior is seeking to meet a need, right? Our behaviors are not inherently bad. You are not inherently bad. Nobody is inherently bad. All of our behaviors are manifestations of something deeper under the surface, right? A deeper need that's not met, a deeper desire, right? Something that that person or individual needs to restore balance and safety in their system, right? So when we see behavior that way, we can get curious about it, right? So what's this overeating really trying to serve and do for me? How is it trying to help me? Even if maybe it's not in the bigger picture, in some way it is trying to help, right? So as we distance ourselves from it, we actually distance ourselves from the ability to understand what that real need is and meet that need. It also leads to a lot of shame and self-hatred, right? Because we have labeled it as bad. And so then if we are engaging in what we've determined as bad, then that must mean something about us, right? So it leads to a lot of shame and a lot of self-loathing. And when we leave these parts of ourselves uncared for, it will find a way for it to get its needs met. That is just a true law of our inner systems, that if we have needs that we don't intentionally meet, they will find an unintentional way to get that need met. So when we distance it and decide it's bad and kind of try to push it away, it comes back in ways that we have less control and less intention over. That's the problem with labeling it as bad and pushing it away. So if we're not labeling it as bad anymore, and we're starting to see that maybe it's serving a purpose, what that begins to do is open up the door to curiosity. And this is really powerful. When I sit with my clients in the space of curiosity, we discover really interesting things about these parts of us that tend to overeat. Things like, I just want to be cared for. I'm tired of my needs not getting met. I'm trying to help care for you by managing your emotions or distract away from them because you aren't caring for them. You aren't showing up for them. I'm tired of feeling hungry, right? I'm tired of just physically feeling hungry, right? These are some of the things that I hear as I sit with my clients, or I hear as I sit with myself from these eating parts, right? They're serving us, trying to help our systems restore a certain level of balance and safety. They're trying to do good, right? They're trying to self-soothe for our emotions. They're trying to care for us. They're trying to prevent the hunger. And getting curious about them, we can start to understand and see underneath some of those drives. So let's talk about the skills that you want to apply here. And these are based in some of the core principles of internal family systems. The first thing you're going to do is notice what you label as good or bad, right? Or what are you labeling as bad? What are you pushing away? And see if you can release some of that label, right? See if you can release some of that judgment and see that behavior in more of a neutral stance. And from there, you're going to get curious. You're going to get curious about what it's trying to do for you. And if you're at all familiar with internal family systems, you can engage in an internal dialogue and simply ask it from that place of curiosity. What is your job? What is your job for me? And what are you afraid would happen if you didn't do this job? And as you start to understand or listen to and hear some of these things, it opens up a new awareness, right, of your system and of these parts of you that actually are not, have zero bad intentions, right? Their intention is actually to help and to serve. And when you hear that, you can then offer it your compassion, right? Offer your compassion and let it know that you see that. You see how hard it's working. You see how hard it's trying. And that you can offer it relief. You can let it release from that job and not need to do that job anymore, right? So you're going to offer it curiosity and then compassion and then hope, right? That's the sequence. And it can be a lot to hold. This can be a lot to hold for an individual to do on your own. And this is where having an IFS coach to help you through that process and hold the space and help navigate that internal work can be really powerful and really helpful. Having another person hold the space while you sit in that place of witness and compassion and curiosity really helps drive the work deeper. But that's the process. You want to start with curiosity, ask and understand, what is it trying to do for you? And what is it afraid would happen if it didn't do that? Now you're starting to understand its intentions and its fears. And as you understand those two things, the compassion often will naturally arise. And then again, you offer it hope. Maybe you don't have to do that job anymore. Maybe there's a different way to get those needs met. Maybe there's a different way to address those fears. So then what can happen? What's the power of this process of developing these skills or working with an IFS trained coach to help you do this work? What then happens? You begin to release, first of all, you release the polarization. So polarization is where you have a part that's trying really hard to help you meet your health goals, and then another part that drives you to overeat, right? And those parts are kind of working against each other. That is a polarization. They're pulling against different directions, going against different directions, and you end up sort of in the crosshairs of that, right? So you can release that polarization. That's the first thing. That release of the polarization then leads to a level of inner peace and calm, right? Where then you have this new access to an energy of calm, clarity, and confidence to where you can navigate your health goals from a place of wisdom. And that's what we want. Anytime there's an energy of control, an energy of urgency, that tends to lead to that polarization and the backlash. But engaging in those health goals from that place of clarity and calm and connectedness, that is where you get the lasting change and the true care for your body. So that's the power of this work. So to bring this all together, to really begin to transform those parts of you that tend to overeat, it starts with letting go of the labels of good and bad and begins with offering it curiosity. Curiosity about its needs, curiosity about its fears, curiosity about what your system needs to be truly cared for so that it can stop engaging in that behavior. It can stop doing the things that are taking you off track from your health goals. Offering it the curiosity, and as you understand its purpose, giving it the compassion and offering it hope that there's a different way and a better way to get your needs met. This is really deep work. And so if you are interested in going deeper in your wellness journey using the principles of internal family systems, it can really help to work with an IFS coach. So whether you work with me or somebody else, it can really help deepen your process. And if you're interested in knowing what it would look like to work with an IFS coach, you can go to nourishwhoyouare.com, sign up for a free coaching session, and you'll experience it firsthand. The link is in the video description. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to click subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.